In the earliest days of the world, when the earth was still young and the gods walked freely among mortals, humanity lived in what would later be remembered as the Golden Age. This was a time of unimaginable peace and prosperity, when men knew neither sorrow nor suffering, neither disease nor death from old age. The Titans Prometheus and Epimetheus, sons of Iapetus, had been entrusted by Zeus with the sacred task of creating and nurturing life upon the earth, while Epimetheus, whose name meant afterthought, worked tirelessly to shape every manner of creature from clay and breathe life into their forms. His brother Prometheus, forethought, supervised the grand design with wisdom that could pierce the veil of time itself. Each animal received its gift according to divine plan. To the eagles they granted the power of soaring through the heavens. To the lions they bestowed tremendous strength and courage. The dolphins received the grace to dance through ocean waves, while the deer were blessed with speed to outrun any pursuer. Every creature found its place in the great tapestry of creation. But when the brothers turned their attention to their most ambitious project, mankind, they discovered that all the gifts had been distributed. The last and most precious of their creations stood before them, beautiful but defenseless, intelligent but fragile. Prometheus gazed upon these early humans with the eyes of a father. They huddled in caves, trembling at the darkness that fell each night. They ate only what fruits dropped naturally from trees. Having no knowledge of cultivation or cooking, they lived in constant fear of wild beasts, having neither weapons nor the wisdom to craft them. Most pitiful of all, they possessed brilliant minds capable of reason and dreams, yet lacked the tools to transform their visions into reality. The Titan's heart filled with compassion for these vulnerable beings. He knew that without divine intervention, humanity would remain forever trapped in ignorance and terror. But he also knew that what he planned to do would anger the gods beyond measure. When night fell and Helios's golden chariot disappeared beyond the western horizon, Prometheus made his fateful journey to the realm of the gods. Mount Olympus blazed with divine light, its peaks crowned with palaces that shimmered like captured starlight. At the heart of this celestial city burned the eternal forge of Hephaestus, where the sacred fire of the gods danced in flames that never died. This was no ordinary fire. It was the very essence of divine knowledge, the flame that separated gods from mortals, civilization from barbarism, wisdom from ignorance. To steal it was not merely theft, but the ultimate act of rebellion against the cosmic order. Prometheus approached the forge with reverence, knowing that each step brought him closer to a punishment that would echo through eternity. With steady hands, he concealed a burning ember within a hollow fennel stalk, its pith glowing with stolen divinity. The theft accomplished, he descended from Olympus like a falling star, carrying hope for humanity in his trembling grasp. When Prometheus delivered fire to mankind, the transformation was miraculous and immediate. Men learned to cook their food, making it more nourishing and palatable. They forged weapons and tools that allowed them to hunt and build. They created art and music that stirred their souls. Most importantly, they began to think like gods themselves, planning, creating and dreaming of futures beyond their immediate needs. But Zeus, the all-seeing lord of Olympus, could not allow such defiance to pass unpunished. The god who had overthrown his own father knew that power unchallenged was power lost. If mortals could steal divine fire without consequence, what other boundaries might they dare to cross? Before his inevitable capture, Prometheus sought out his brother Epimetheus. The two titans met in the twilight hours, when neither day nor night held dominion over the world. Prometheus's face bore the weight of prophecy, for his gift of foresight showed him the terrible price he would soon pay. "My beloved brother," Prometheus spoke, his voice heavy with the knowledge of coming doom. "The theft I have committed will not go unanswered. Zeus's rage burns hotter than the very fire I stole. Soon his agents will come for me, and I will face a punishment beyond mortal comprehension." Epimetheus, whose nature was to act first and consider consequences later, felt his heart break at his brother's words. "Then why?" he cried. "Why risk everything for creatures who may never understand the price you paid for their advancement?" "Because," Prometheus replied, placing his hand upon his brother's shoulder. True love requires sacrifice. These mortals carry within them the spark of something greater than even the gods anticipated. But Zeus will not stop with my punishment alone. His vengeance will extend to all of humanity, and to you as well. The Titan of forethought gazed into his brother's eyes with desperate intensity. Listen to me carefully, Epimetheus. In the days to come, Zeus will send you gifts that appear beautiful beyond measure. These offerings will seem like blessings, but they will carry within them the seeds of humanity's downfall. No matter how perfect these gifts may appear, no matter how your heart yearns to accept them, you must refuse. Promise me this, brother. Swear by the waters of Styx that you will accept nothing from the gods. Epimetheus, moved by his brother's anguish and convinced by the urgency in his voice, clasped Prometheus's hand. I swear it, my brother. No gift from Olympus shall pass my threshold. Our creation will remain safe, whatever the cost. Zeus's retribution came swiftly and without mercy. The king of the gods ordered his servants to seize Prometheus and carry him to the desolate peaks of the Caucasus Mountains. There, using chains forged from adamant, a substance harder than diamond and unbreakable by any force, they bound the Titan to a towering cliff face. But mere imprisonment was insufficient for Zeus's wrath. Each dawn, as Helios's chariot began its journey across the sky, a monstrous eagle would descend from the heavens. This was no ordinary bird, but a creature of divine vengeance, its talons sharp enough to rend divine flesh and its beak capable of tearing through immortal sinew. Day after day, the eagle would feast upon Prometheus's liver, devouring the organ with methodical cruelty while the Titan screamed in agony. Yet because Prometheus was immortal, his liver would regenerate each night, only to be torn apart again when dawn returned. This cycle would continue for thousands of years, each day bringing fresh torment to the Titan who dared to love humanity more than he feared divine wrath. From his chains, Prometheus could see the world below, watching as mortals used his gift of fire to build cities, create art, and push back the darkness that had once consumed their nights. Though his body burned with endless pain, his spirit remained unbroken, for he knew that his sacrifice had meaning. But Zeus's vengeance was far from complete. In the golden halls of Olympus, the god-king summoned the greatest craftsman among the immortals, Hephaestus, the divine smith whose works surpassed even the finest creations of mortal artisans. "My son," Zeus commanded, his voice resonating with the power of thunder, "I have need of your most exquisite artistry. You must create for me a being of such beauty and perfection that no mortal or immortal could resist her charms. Yet this beauty must serve as the instrument of my justice." Hephaestus, though troubled by the ominous undertones in his father's words, could not refuse a direct command from the king of the gods. In his forge beneath Mount Olympus, where the fires burned hotter than the center of the earth, he began his masterwork. Using clay gathered from the banks of the river that flows around the world, Hephaestus shaped the form of the first woman. His hands, guided by divine inspiration, molded features of breathtaking perfection. Her face possessed the serene beauty of Aphrodite, her form the graceful elegance of Artemis, and her bearing the regal dignity of Hera herself. When the clay figure was complete, Athena breathed life into the creation, and the first woman opened her eyes to gaze upon the world. But Zeus was not content with mere physical perfection. He summoned all the gods and goddesses of Olympus to bestow gifts upon this new creation. Aphrodite approached first, her smile mysterious as sea foam. With a gentle touch, she blessed the woman with beauty so radiant that men would abandon their duties merely to glimpse her passing. Her skin would glow like moonlight on water, her hair would shine like spun gold, and her eyes would hold depths that could drown the souls of those who stared too long. Hermes, the silver-tongued messenger of the gods, granted her the gift of persuasive speech. Her voice would be like honey mixed with wine, sweet, intoxicating, and impossible to refuse. She could convince the wise to act as fools, the strong to become weak, and the faithful to betray their deepest convictions with nothing more than whispered words. The three Charites, goddesses of charm and grace, adorned her with clothing woven from threads of starlight and jewels that captured the essence of rainbows. Every movement she made would be poetry in motion, every gesture an invitation to wonder and desire. Athena, though knowing this creation would bring sorrow to mankind, could not refuse her father's will. She taught the woman the domestic arts, weaving, cooking, and managing a household, skills that would make her seem the perfect companion for any man fortunate enough to win her affections. But Zeus reserved the most crucial gift for himself. Into the woman's heart he placed an insatiable curiosity, a hunger for knowledge that would gnaw at her soul like a living thing. This curiosity would be her defining characteristic, the trait that would ensure she fulfilled her destined purpose. When all the gifts had been bestowed, Zeus gazed upon the completed creation with satisfaction. She was indeed perfect, too perfect for mortal comprehension. He named her Pandora, meaning all gifted, for she had received blessings from every deity in Olympus. As Pandora prepared for her journey to the mortal realm, Zeus presented her with one final gift, a box of extraordinary beauty, crafted from precious woods and adorned with gold and precious gems. It seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. Strange symbols covered its surface, writing in a language that predated human civilization. "My dear Pandora," Zeus said, his voice deceptively gentle, "this box contains a gift of immeasurable value, something that will benefit all of mankind. When you reach the mortal world, you must present it to Epimetheus as a token of divine favor." Pandora gazed upon the box with wonder, feeling her divinely implanted curiosity stir like a serpent awakening from slumber. What lies within, mighty Zeus? Surely a gift of such beauty must contain treasures beyond imagination. Zeus's smile was as cold as winter storms. "That, my dear child, is not for you to know. The box must remain sealed until the proper time comes for its opening. Under no circumstances must you lift its lid, for to do so would bring consequences beyond your understanding." But even as he spoke these words of warning, Zeus knew that Pandora's divine curiosity would make obedience impossible. The very gift he had placed within her heart would ensure that she would eventually open the box, releasing its contents upon an unsuspecting world. Hermes, the swift messenger of the gods, was tasked with delivering Pandora to the mortal realm. They traveled through the spaces between earth and sky, passing through clouds that parted like curtains at their approach. Below them, the world spread out in pristine beauty, forests untouched by axe or fire, rivers running clear and pure, and human settlements where people lived in harmony with nature and each other. When they arrived at Epimetheus's dwelling, a simple but elegant structure built near a grove of ancient olive trees, the Titan was tending to his garden. The sight of Hermes approaching filled him with immediate suspicion, for visits from the gods rarely brought good fortune to mortals or Titans alike. "Greetings, noble Epimetheus," Hermes called out, his voice carrying the musical quality that made his words impossible to ignore. "I bring you a gift from Zeus himself, a token of divine favor, and a sign that the king of the gods bears no ill will toward you or your brother." Epimetheus looked up from his work, and his breath caught in his throat. Before him stood the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, more lovely than the dawn breaking over mountain peaks, more graceful than swans gliding across still water. Pandora smiled, and that smile seemed to illuminate the very air around her. For a moment, Prometheus's warning echoed in Epimetheus's mind, "Accept nothing from the gods." But as he gazed upon Pandora's perfect features, as he breathed in the subtle fragrance that seemed to surround her like invisible flowers, all thoughts of caution fled from his consciousness. This was not some trick or trap, his heart told him. This was love itself, delivered from the realm of the gods. How could something so beautiful, so pure, be anything other than a blessing? "She is called Pandora," Hermes continued, noting the glazed look that had come over the Titan's features. "All the gods have blessed her with their finest gifts. She is to be your companion, your helper, and your wife, if you will have her." Epimetheus's resolve, already weakened by Pandora's supernatural beauty, crumbled entirely. His brother's warnings seemed like the ravings of paranoia when faced with such obvious divine favor. Surely Zeus had relented in his anger. Surely this beautiful woman was a sign of peace between gods and titans. I accept, Epimetheus stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. She is welcome in my home. Hermes smiled, knowing his mission was complete. Then my task is finished. May you find happiness together. With these words, the messenger god departed, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone that marked the presence of divinity. The early days of Pandora and Epimetheus's union were filled with joy beyond description. Pandora proved to be everything the gods had crafted her to be, a perfect companion whose beauty never faded and whose presence brought light to every corner of their home. She tended their garden with skills taught by Athena, coaxing flowers to bloom in impossible profusion and vegetables to grow larger and more flavorful than any seen before. When she sang while working, birds would gather to listen, and even the wind seemed to still itself to better hear her voice. In the evenings, she would weave by the light of the fire Prometheus had given to mankind, creating tapestries that told stories of gods and heroes with such artistry that they seemed to move in the flickering light. Her cooking filled their home with aromas that could make the hungriest person content and the saddest heart light. But most importantly, she brought to Epimetheus a companionship he had never known. No longer did he spend his evenings in solitude, pondering the great works of creation. Instead, he had someone to share his thoughts, his dreams, and his daily experiences. Pandora listened to his stories with rapt attention, her eyes wide with wonder at tales of the early days of the world. Their love grew stronger with each passing day. They would walk together through forests where every tree seemed to bow in acknowledgement of Pandora's beauty. They would sit by streams that reflected her image like mirrors made of liquid silver. At night, they would lie beneath stars that seemed to shine more brightly in her presence. Yet even in these moments of perfect happiness, Pandora's divine curiosity gnawed at her peace like a worm in otherwise perfect fruit. Her eyes would inevitably wander to the beautiful box that Zeus had given her, which now rested upon a shelf in their home's main room. It seemed to call to her, its golden surface gleaming even in dim light, its mysterious symbols seeming to shift and dance when she wasn't looking directly at them. As days turned to weeks and weeks to months, Pandora's fascination with the box grew stronger. She would find herself staring at it during her daily tasks, wondering what treasures it might contain. Sometimes she would approach it, her hands hovering over its lid, her heart racing with anticipation and fear in equal measure. The box seemed to have a presence of its own. In the quiet hours before dawn, she could swear she heard sounds coming from within, whispers too soft to understand, or perhaps the rustling of something alive stirring in the darkness. These sounds both thrilled and terrified her, feeding her curiosity while warning her of dangers she couldn't comprehend. Epimetheus noticed his wife's growing preoccupation but attributed it to the natural interests of someone surrounded by divine mystery. When he asked about her distraction, Pandora would smile and deflect his concerns with gentle words and loving touches. She couldn't bear to worry him with her growing obsession, nor could she risk having him remove the box from her sight. At night she would lie awake listening to her husband's peaceful breathing, while her mind raced with possibilities. What if the box contained jewels beyond price? Diamonds that captured entire rainbows, or rubies that burned with their own inner fire? What if it held scrolls containing the secret knowledge of the gods themselves? Sometimes her imagination took darker turns. What if the box contained something alive, a creature of divine origin waiting to be released into the world? The sounds she heard in the pre-dawn hours seemed to support this theory, growing stronger and more insistent as her curiosity grew. The morning that would change the fate of humanity forever began like any other. Epimetheus had risen early to tend to urgent matters in his workshop, leaving Pandora alone with her thoughts and her growing obsession. The box seemed to glow more brightly than usual, its surface warm to the touch when she finally approached it. Standing before the object of her desires, Pandora felt the full weight of Zeus's warning. Under no circumstances must you lift its lid. But alongside that divine prohibition, she heard another voice, the voice of her own curiosity, grown so strong it seemed like a separate entity within her mind. What harm could there be in simply looking? The voice whispered. Surely the king of the gods would not give you something truly dangerous. Perhaps his warning was meant to test your wisdom, and opening the box at the right moment would prove your worth. Her hands trembled as she reached for the lid. The metal was warm beneath her fingers, and she could swear she felt something moving within. Not the random stirring of inanimate objects, but the purposeful movement of something alive and aware. Just a peek, she told herself. Just enough to see what lies within, then I'll close it again. No one need ever know. But even as she spoke these words of self-deception, Pandora knew there would be no turning back. The curiosity that Zeus had planted in her heart had grown beyond her ability to control. It demanded satisfaction, regardless of the consequences. With a deep breath that seemed to draw in all the peace and innocence of the Golden Age, Pandora lifted the lid of the beautiful box. What happened next occurred with the speed of lightning and the inevitability of fate itself. The moment the lid opened, a tremendous pressure erupted from within the box. Not the gentle release of trapped air, but the violent explosion of forces that had been imprisoned since the dawn of creation. Dark shapes burst forth like smoke made solid, writhing and shrieking as they filled the room. Pandora screamed and stumbled back as the shapes coalesced into forms both grotesque and terrifying. Pain flew forth first, spreading invisible talons across the world. Men who had once lived without suffering suddenly found themselves racked with illness and injury. Cuts no longer healed overnight. Bones no longer knit themselves back together without effort. Grief followed close behind, filling hearts with sorrow previously unknown. Parents wept for children lost to accidents. Lovers mourned the deaths of their beloveds, and the human heart, once untouched by despair, learned the terrible weight of loss. Hunger escaped in the form of a gaunt, skeletal figure whose touch turned fertile fields barren and left tables empty. Men who had once eaten their fill now knew the gnawing emptiness of starvation. War emerged as a blood-soaked warrior, sowing seeds of conflict in human hearts. Brothers raised weapons against brothers, tribes against tribes, nations against nations, forever changing the peaceful harmony of mankind's existence. Disease slithered forth as a serpent with many heads, each one breathing plagues into the air. Fevers, coughs, and wasting sicknesses spread across the earth, striking down young and old alike. Deception, envy, greed, madness, one by one, the evils of the world poured forth from the box, filling every corner of the earth with suffering that could never be undone. Pandora, horrified by what she had unleashed, tried desperately to close the lid. She pushed with all her strength, her tears blinding her, but the flood of horrors was unstoppable. Only when the last of the great evils had escaped did she finally manage to slam the box shut, her heart pounding with terror and guilt. Collapsing beside the box, Pandora wept uncontrollably. She had been the instrument of humanity's downfall, the vessel through which Zeus had enacted his vengeance upon the world. The paradise of the Golden Age was shattered forever, replaced by a world where suffering, death, and despair would reign. Yet within the box one thing remained. As Pandora's sobs began to quiet, she heard a gentle sound, softer than a whisper, lighter than a feather. Curious even in her despair, she slowly lifted the lid one final time. This time, no horrors emerged. Instead, a single radiant light rose from the box, glowing with warmth and gentleness. Unlike the dark spirits that had preceded it, this presence brought comfort rather than fear. It was hope. Hope drifted into the world like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Wherever it touched, human hearts lifted slightly beneath their burdens. The sick found the strength to endure another day, the grieving discovered the will to continue living, and the oppressed dreamed of freedom even in chains. Though humanity had been cursed with suffering, they were also blessed with the one thing that could make their suffering bearable. Hope became the counterbalance to despair. the force that prevented mankind from surrendering to the darkness that now surrounded them. When Epimetheus returned and saw what had transpired, his heart broke for both his wife and the world they had unwittingly doomed. But when Pandora explained the emergence of hope, even he could not deny the wisdom of its presence. Without this final gift, humanity would surely have perished beneath the weight of its new burdens. Thus the world was forever changed. The Golden Age was gone, replaced by an existence marked by toil, suffering, and mortality. Yet within this new reality, mankind discovered resilience and strength born of necessity. They learned to fight against adversity, to cling to hope even in the darkest of times, and to find meaning in the struggle itself. As for Prometheus, his torment continued for countless centuries, each day bringing fresh agony as the eagle tore into his immortal flesh. But even in his endless suffering, he took solace in the knowledge that his sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity, though burdened by suffering, had also been given the tools to rise above it, the fire of knowledge and the light of hope. And so the myth of Pandora's box became one of the most enduring tales of the ancient world, a story of divine punishment and unintended consequences, of suffering and resilience, of despair and the hope that forever endures. For in the end, even when the world seems filled with darkness, hope remains, and as long as hope survives, humanity will never be truly defeated.